Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker, Ade Adepitan.
Wow, I love that introduction. Round of applause to the band. It's incredible. These butterflies on the stage, it's amazing. Look at this. Do you know what? It's fantastic to be here. Really loving it. And one of the things that always interests me is when I get introduced onto the stage and people talk about the stuff that I've achieved and that, I look into the crowd and I know that most of them are looking at me and the only thing that they really can remember is that BBC One advert. Yeah, exactly, that BBC One ident that I did all those years ago with the three guys in the wheelchairs that did the little dance that was incidentally replaced by swimming hippopotamus. Can you believe that? I was replaced. Hey, don't cheer for the hippopotamus, what about me? Listen, about a month and a half ago, I was in Rio for the 2016 Paralympic Games. I was covering it for Channel 4. I was fortunate enough to be there as a presenter. And I remember before we were about to go live, looking out, because our studio had these glass panels and we could look out into the Olympic Park. I remember looking out into the Olympic Park and seeing thousands of people in there and just thinking, how amazing, what an amazing spectacle this was. You know, people from all over Rio embracing the Paralympic sports. And it made me think, you know, I still think about it now, because it's not often you get a chance to sort of take a breath when you're doing these amazing things. And it made me think, how on earth did I get here? How did I get here? I was this ordinary kid from Plaistow, East London, and suddenly, you know, now I'm here talking about the Paralympics to millions of people on camera. So if you bear with me, I'm going to talk about my journey, you know, and the journey that I went through in order to get to where I have. And because I think it's really important, because when people talk about all the accolades and all the medals and the things that you won, I think what people forget is the journey. And to me, that's the most important part. And I mean, my journey began with sport. I was always extremely passionate about sport. I suppose the first games, Olympic Games, that really resonated with me were the 1984 Games in Los Angeles. And these were the first games where showbiz and sport came together. And I remember watching these on my parents had bought this black and white TV. Yeah, I really am that old. But they bought this black and white TV, and I remember watching the games and just being absolutely just encapsulated and just sort of enraptured by the incredible feats that these guys were doing. And I was so passionate about the sport that I remember when the 100 meters would start, I'd be on the sofa in the living room, and as soon as the 100 meters would start, I'd close my eyes and the gun would go off, and I'd start pumping my arms, imagining that I was doing the 100 meters. 200 meters would start, I'd do exactly the same. 110 meter hurdles, I'd do exactly the same, and I'd do a hop on the sofa as well. And by the time it got to the 10,000 meters, I was absolutely shattered, because I did all the heats, and my mum would open the door and she'd look through the door and she'd be like, what is this boy doing? Is he crazy? You know, but that's how passionate I was about sport, and I wanted to imagine myself being there. Now, I'm going to rewind the clock back to where I was born, and I grew up, well, I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, and in Nigeria, at the age of 15 months, I contracted polio. And polio affected mainly the left side of my body, mainly my left arm, and severely my left leg. And it meant that I was unable to walk. And my mum realized very quickly that it was going to be extremely difficult for me to cope in Nigeria with polio. So my parents made probably what was the most important decision of my life, and it was a decision that probably saved my life, actually, and that was to use all their savings and all the money that they could borrow from their friends and family, and for us to move to the UK. because they knew that the UK was better equipped for a child with a disability back then. And we moved to the East End of London. We moved to Plaistow, and when I was 3 years old, and within the first couple of years, we came across our first hurdle, and that was schooling. And that was because back then, schools were separated into mainstream and disability schools. Now, if you were able-bodied, like most of you are here, you went to a mainstream school. If you were disabled, you had to go to a disability school back then. My parents, though, were extremely determined that I should go to a mainstream school because they said, you're going to be surrounded by able-bodied people and you're going to grow up in an able-bodied world, and this will be the best preparation for you in later life. And they had to fight tooth and nail with the local education authority in East London and with the schools to find a school that would accept me. Because at that time, no schools wanted to take a disabled kid. And I used to walk on calipers. I don't know if you've ever seen Forrest Gump. If any of you have ever seen Forrest Gump, I used to wear, if you remember the scene where Forrest is being chased by these bullies and his girlfriend's going, run, Forrest. Well, I wore those iron rods in my leg into these hospital boots. And yeah, so back then, as I was saying, it was really difficult to find a school that would accept me. But finally, after the best part of a year of missing school, a school in East London, in Upton Park, accepted me. And it was an old school that was built before the First World War. It was 3 stories high, stairs, no ramps, no lifts, no accessibility at all. And I remember on the day of my first day of school, I know there was a number of groups of people who were probably extremely worried. I know the teachers at that school were very worried because I was going to be the first kid with a disability coming to that school. I know the education authority were worried because if anything went wrong, they were worried they might get sued. I know my parents were really worried as well because if things went wrong, they were the ones who were going to have to pick up the pieces. But I was also extremely worried, and I was worried because on the day before my first day of school, my worries were completely different to my parents and Teachers Education Authority. But I know that on the day before my first day of school, my mum took me to a very famous market in the East End of London, not far from here, called Petticoat Lane Market. And at Petticoat Lane Market, my mum decided to buy me a pair of pink, checkered, flared trousers. They may be cool now, but trust me, back then, those trousers were not in. And she decided also that the pink checkered flare trousers were not just enough for a young son to wear on his first day of school. She also bought me a shirt that had this frilly bit on the front. I mean, I don't know what the frilly business was, but it was some crazy thing that went on the front. She combed my hair into this big, massive afro, so I looked like this big, massive microphone head. And she combed like a side part in the size of the Blackwall Tunnel into the side of my head. And my mum thought this was the best way to dress her young son on his first day of school in the East End of London. I was screwing. I wasn't happy at all. I was properly upset about it. But I suppose it was just an amazing ploy by my mum because it took my mind off my physical disability and put my mind straight away onto my fashion disability. I mean, I was like, look at this, what am I wearing? I remember going to school on that first day extremely nervous, thinking, what are the kids going to say? They're going to take the mickey out of me. I mean, not only am I wearing these crazy clothes, I've got this disability, I've got crazy haircut, and I had a strong Nigerian accent back then. And I remember walking into the playground, very, very worried. But then I saw a group of kids in the corner, and as I said to you before, I was very passionate about sport. And I saw these kids in the corner playing football, and I wanted to join in. And I walked over to them, asked if I could join in. They took one look at the way I was dressed, and they were like, no way, we're not having any of that. But I was very persistent, moaned and nagged at them all day. And by the final play time, just to shut me up, they decided to allow me to play. And the usual thing happens. You had 2 kids who were the 2 captains, and they picked 2 teams. And of course, I was picked last. And they said, stick him in goal, where he's out of the way and he's not going to dazzle us with his crazy flares and his crazy clothes. So there I was in goal, and ladies and gentlemen, I really want you to imagine this. Come with me. Imagine I am your virtual reality set. But there I am, back then on my first day of school, in goal, pink checkered flared trousers, jumpers for goalposts on either side, crazy hair, crazy shirt. You know, I had this big Parker coat. I had my mittens attached to strings on the Parker coat, and I'm moving from right to left. And the best footballer in our school, a guy called Stuart Harvey, breaks loose, and he's one-on-one against me in goal. So I'm moving like this from right to left. And when I remember this moment, it's like there's beautiful music playing, and it's like it's all happening in slow motion. Stuart blasts this ball, and fortunately for me, it goes to my right-hand side, which is my strongest side. And I managed to throw myself to one side and save what was going to be a certain goal. And I landed on the floor. I was rolling around on the floor in pain and just thinking, wow, what's going on here? And it felt like the whole playground just went silent. And I went from this fashion freak with a funny accent and crazy hair to a schoolboy sporting hero all in one afternoon because of this one moment. And I even remember one of the biggest kids in our school, a guy called Spencer Greenfield, came up to me, and in true East London fashion, he was like, Ade, or whatever your effing name is, if anyone says anything to you about your dodgy name, your dodgy hair, your dodgy trousers, your dodgy leg, come to me and I'll sort them out, because you're one of us now. And it was a really incredible moment for me, because it made me realize that sport was going to open so many doors for me, and it was going to build so many bridges. And it gave me a huge amount of confidence. And school went okay for me. I mean, there were problems, there were ups and downs, but it generally went okay for me after this period. And I suppose the next major moment came when I discovered wheelchair basketball. And I didn't discover wheelchair basketball till I was about 12 years old, and I'd never heard of disability sport or wheelchair basketball. And I was spotted by some physiotherapists who were based in East London, and they'd set up a sports team for disabled people. This was back in the 80s, because they felt sport was going to be a great way to help disabled kids achieve their independence. They had incredible foresight back then. And I was spotted by them because they'd heard about me and they wanted me to join their team. They didn't know how to contact me, but I was spotted by them by total coincidence, because they saw me as I was being raced through the streets by my mates in a Tesco shopping trolley. And the reason why I'd been raced through the streets in a Tesco shopping trolley is because I used to walk around on those calipers and I couldn't keep up with my friends. And we decided the best way for me to get around speedily and efficiently was in a Tesco shopping trolley. But don't worry, we didn't discriminate. We didn't just take Tesco's, we took Sainsbury's shopping trolleys, Marks, we took every shopping trolley there was. But yeah, they pulled up, these two physios, both hippie-looking people. One was called Owen, the other one was called Kay, and they pulled up to me in this Sunshine Variety bus, charity bus. They'd just dropped off some kids at a sporting event, and they recognised me straight away, and they looked out the window, and I remember Kay saying to me, "You're Ade, aren't you?" And I was immediately alarmed at how these strange-looking people knew my name and knew who I was. And they said, "How would you like to play wheelchair basketball?" And I looked at them and I thought, "You're having a laugh. Wheelchair basketball, what is that?" And it is incredible when I think about it now. It's just really bizarre, the negative perceptions that I had as a disabled person of someone in a wheelchair. But back then, I think, there was a lot of negative thoughts about disability and being in a wheelchair. I mean, it was almost seen as if you were in a wheelchair, you had lower intelligence than an able-bodied person. And I was like, there's no way I'm getting in a chair. And I said to these guys, I'm not having it. I'm not interested in wheelchair basketball or any sort of disability sport. But fortunately for me, they were extremely persistent. They came to my school, they spoke to my teachers, they spoke to my parents, and after 4 months, they convinced me to go to a place called Stoke Mandeville, where they were hosting the Junior Wheelchair Games. And I remember going to Stoke Mandeville and just being totally blown away by seeing so many people with disabilities. I'd never seen so many different types of blind people, amputees, people with spina bifida, people in wheelchairs. It was just like mind-boggling to me, because I went to an able-bodied school and I never saw myself as having a disability, and I'd never seen other disabled people, and it was just really strange. But it just so happened that at the time I went to Stoke Mandeville, there were guys from the Great Britain wheelchair basketball team, the men's team, who were training. And seeing these guys just totally blew all my preconceptions of disability out the window. I was expecting to see these guys in hospital wheelchairs, you know, big rubbish wheelchairs with their legs out, and I thought they were going to be pushed around by people and stuff. But these guys were in state-of-the-art wheelchairs. You know, their wheelchairs were funky colors. They were doing wheelies. They were shooting three-point shots. They were falling out of their chairs. You know, they were falling out of their chairs on the floor, laughing about it, taking the mickey out of each other, and just getting back in the chairs. And that was it. It was nothing. I was like, wow, this is incredible. You know, the sport was dynamic. It was exciting. And the guys had the biggest arms I'd ever seen. And I thought, you know what I mean, 12 years old, I was like, I need arms like that. And so I went and spoke to these two physios who introduced me to sport and said, how do I get my first wheelchair? And they went and spoke to Frank Bruno, who was an up-and-coming boxer at the time, and he had a boxing club in my area in East London, and he raised money for me to get my first basketball wheelchair. Now, it was called a Chevron 700, which probably means absolutely nothing to you guys, but to me at the time it was beautiful. It arrived, and I remember getting in the chair thinking this is awesome, playing basketball, but I never took this chair to school. And the reason why I never took it to school is because I was really worried about what my friends were going to think when they saw me in a wheelchair. I was worried about how they would perceive me, because one minute they'd seen me walking on my calipers, the next minute I was in a chair. Very nervous. But I was starting to get more and more problems with walking to school. I was getting back problems. You know, my back was aching because it was a long walk. It was about a mile walk to school. I was walking up and down the stairs with my school books. I remember speaking to my doctor, and the doctor saying to me, because I told him about my back problems, he said to me, he knew I used the chair. He said, why don't you use your chair to go to school? Take it to school. And I was like, nah, I don't know about that. And he said to me, no, seriously, if you don't start using your wheelchair a bit more often, especially for long journeys, you're going to do yourself permanent damage. In the end, I had to do it because I was in so much pain when I would come home from school. And so I remember pushing to school in my wheelchair for the first time. And it felt like that first day of school again. You know, it felt like I'm going to have people just laughing at me and looking at me in a strange way. And you know what you're like when you're a kid? You just want to blend in. You don't want to be different. You want to just fit in with everyone else. And anything that makes you stand out just makes you scared. And I was petrified. Pushing to school, sweat running down the back of my neck. And yeah, I remember going into the playground. But by that afternoon playtime, I'd ended up making £40 out of renting out my wheelchair to all my friends. Because absolutely every single one of them wanted to have a go in the chair, and they wanted to learn how to do wheelies. And I thought, wow, this is cool. Oh, well, I might as well charge them. So I charged them £2 a time, and it was great. I mean, so it was a really amazing moment for me, because not only did it help me become a business entrepreneur and start making money out of my wheelchair, but it also made me realize that my friends were willing to accept me for me. And it wasn't about my disability. They didn't give a damn about my chair. And they actually thought the fact that I played wheelchair basketball was cool. They thought it was cool back then. They loved it. So this gave me an extreme amount of confidence, and it inspired me to go for my dream, which was to become a Paralympian and to represent Great Britain. And I got my first opportunity when I was 18. And at the age of 18, I had a chance to train for try and get selected for the Barcelona Paralympic team. And I remember training with the squad. There were guys who were a lot older than me, who were all my heroes in that team, thinking, well, I'm not going to make it in this team, but it's great to be here. And I didn't get selected, but I used that moment as inspiration, and I said, in 4 years' time, I'm going to get selected for the team that goes to the Atlanta Paralympics. And in the intervening 4 years, I had an amazing time. I got a semi-scholarship to the University of Illinois in Chicago, which I didn't take because I was then offered a professional contract to play basketball in Spain, in Real Zaragoza. So I moved to Spain, played basketball there for 2 years. But after 2 years, I cut my contract short, came back to the UK the year before the Atlanta Games, because our national team coach said he was only selecting players for the team who were based in the UK. So I gave up my professional contract because all I wanted to do was play for Great Britain. And what happens when they're selecting the team is they pick the best players from around the country. There's about 50 at the time. You go to Stoke Mandeville, and this team is eventually broken down to the 12 players that are selected for the games. So I went to these camps, and each week they were broken down from 50 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 15. And I got cut at the 15th player. I got told by the coaches at the 15th player that I wasn't good enough, that I had things that I had to work on. And this was devastating. I was only young, and this was the second time I was told I wasn't good enough. And this was my dream. This was my dream that I'd had ever since I was a kid, to represent my country. But I thought, let's not sulk, let's not get down on yourself, because each year, fortunately, there was a major championships. And next year was the European Championships in Paris. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to make it into this squad. I'm going to train really hard and get into this team. So I went away, trained really hard, and went through that selection process again. Then went from 50 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 15. And I got cut once again at the 15th player. And once again, I got told by the coaches, nah, you're still not good enough, Ade. There's still things you need to work on. You still don't quite fit in the team dynamic. All of these excuses, all of these things about me that just wasn't right. And I just didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I was just, I was discombobulated, man. I was like, well, how am I going to make this work? I've thrown all my eggs into this basket. This is my dream. But I thought, hold on, the following year, World Championships, Edmonton, in Canada, I'll make it. Went through that selection process again, 50, 40, 30, 20, 15, again, cut. Again told, no, there's still stuff you have to work on. And this was one of the lowest points in my life. And I was just really struggling at this point. But I thought, I'm going to give it one more crack, because the following year was the Europeans again. Europeans come every 2 years, Worlds every 2 years, Paralympics every 4 years. And this time the European Championships were going to be in Madrid in Spain. And Spain was like my second home. I had loads of friends there, and I thought, it's destiny. It's written in the stars that I will make it into this squad. I will be in this team. And I trained so hard, man. I did everything I thought was necessary to get in this team. And I went through that selection process again, and it went from 50 to 40 to 20 to 15 to 14 to 13. And I got cut at the 13th player. I got told by the coaches that I would be made the first reserve. And if anyone got injured, they would call me, but there was players that were younger than me, and they were trying to do something with the team that they didn't think I was quite right for and stuff like that. I was, I'm trying to think back at this moment, and, when I really look back, it's very difficult for me to articulate into words how low I was. Can you imagine having a dream, the dream that you've had all your life, and it just constantly being crushed every year, broken, told you're not good enough. And I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but for the first time in my life, I decided to give up. I decided, that's it. Maybe they're right. I'm not good enough. And I remember my father's words, God rest his soul, but he used to say to me, Ade, you are black. You are disabled. Why are you wasting your time playing basketball? You have to work twice as hard as anybody in this country if you want to succeed. Wheelchair basketball will get you nowhere. And those words rung in my ears, and I thought, he's right. And all these people are right. I've spent all these years wasting my time. I'm rubbish. I can't play this sport. I'm never going to get anywhere. And I spent 4 months in limbo, not knowing what I was going to do with my life. My passion had been ripped out. And then after 4 months, I get a phone call from a friend of mine called Amir, who played for the Hackney Sparrows wheelchair basketball team, one of my first teams I played for. And he said to me, Ade, we want you to play as a guest player in this tournament that we're playing in Cyprus. We'd really love you to come over. And I said to him, Amir, look, I'm not interested in wheelchair basketball anymore. I've had enough of it. And he said, Ade, we've heard about all that nonsense with the GB team. Forget about that, and forget about the basketball stuff, and just think about basketball for all the reasons why you played it in the first place. And that was because you love the sport. That wasn't quite enough for me. It was a great speech, but Amir called me. I said, it was a nice one, Amir, but I'm not having it. But he called me every day for a week. And in the end, I was like, I need to shut this guy up, and I treat it as a holiday. And I decided to go to Cyprus. So I went out to this tournament in Cyprus. It was crazy. I was a bit down for the first couple of games, but lo and behold, our team made it into the semi-final of this big, massive tournament. And we end up playing against this German team. It was the favourite team to win the team that was favourites to win the tournament. And it's a semi-final. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen a wheelchair basketball game played before. You're supposed to have 5 players versus 5. Well, with 2 minutes left, we had 2 players left on the court. And all the players on the team, including myself, had been fouled out by the referees. And I was sitting on the sideline, bottom lip out, thinking, this is a conspiracy. They don't want us to win. We're this ragamuffin team from Hackney. You know, we're having a laugh. We're not even wearing the same kit. They don't want us in the final. They're trying everything to stop us from winning. And I called a timeout, and the 2 players that were left on the court, Andy and Jig, who you might recognise from the BBC One ident many years ago, they were only young at the time. I said to them, let's leave this game. Let's quit. They don't want us to win. They're just trying to humiliate us. And I remember Andy looking at me in the eye and saying, Ad, we can still win this game. We can still win it. And I was like, he's having a laugh in it. And I remember getting his water bottle and having a drink, making sure he hadn't filled it with alcohol, because I'm just like, you know, 2 against 5, they're always going to have three open players. We're never going to be able to stop them. But I'm like, who am I to stop these guys and deny them this opportunity? Let them play, and when we lose, we'll talk about how we were robbed after the game. So I let them play, and the craziest game of wheelchair basketball, nowhere of a light ensued. So I'd never seen this before, but it was like there was a lid on the basket for the German team. They just couldn't score. They just couldn't. They missed easy shot after easy shot. And with 11 seconds to go, we're losing by 2 points. And I'm like, fair play. 2-point loss, 2 against 5. I'll take that all day long. But then, you know, with 11 seconds to go, Jiggy is at the halfway line. He's sideways on. He's got a player there stopping him from moving, a player there stopping him from moving, a player behind him. And Andy's only little, and he's surrounded by 2 players. Jiggy's got the ball in his hand, and he's lining up this hook shot. I think he's having a laugh. He thinks he's going to make this. And he's lining up this hook shot from the halfway line. It even looks like the referee's trying to grab his arm to stop him from shooting. And the halfway line's like from here to almost the end of this hall. And Jiggy throws up this hook shot. And I don't know whether there was a window open in the sports hall and there was this breeze that blew this ball and made it change direction in the air, or whether the Cypriot food didn't agree with someone in the crowd and they did this huge fart that blew the ball and made it change directions. But it felt like this ball changed directions while it was in the air, and it went in for 3 points, and we ended up winning this game by 1 point. It was just the most fantastic, amazing game I've ever played in. I mean, Jiggy's a hero. He can't go back to Cyprus without them throwing flowers at him. I mean, it's just, they love him over there, and he never lets us forget that shot. But it was just unbelievable. And at the end of the game, after we finished hugging and crying, I went up to those 2 guys and I said to them, thank you. I said, thank you, because they had taught me a valuable lesson. It was an invaluable lesson, actually. It was like something that I will never forget, and that is to never, ever give up, and always believe in yourself. Always believe in something, whatever you're passionate about. And regardless of what other people say, it's your dream. You have to believe in yourself before other people believe in yourself. And I used this moment, reinvigorated, revived. I went back to the UK, and I went on the internet, and I studied what the best players in the world were doing. And I trained 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. All right? My love for the sport came back, and I shot 800 shots a day in the morning. I also pushed 2 miles a day, and in the evening I did some extra stretching and some weight work. And I set myself goals and targets every day and every week. If I reached my target, I got Sunday off, and I chilled out and watched EastEnders Omnibus. And if I didn't reach my target, I trained on a Sunday. And I still remember to this day, one of the greatest days of my life. It was after 12 years of being told I wasn't good enough, of being told I would never make it, of being constantly told that, you know, there were things that I needed to do to improve. But I still remember getting this letter through the post, April 2000, from the Great Britain Wheelchair Basketball Association, saying, congratulations, Ade Adepitan, you have been selected for the Great Britain basketball team for the Sydney 2000 Paralympics. It was the greatest day of my life. Now, before I finish my little speech with you guys, I just want to show you some clips, 3 clips from 3 really important moments in my life. I'm going to apologize now because one of them has some strong language in it, but when you hear the language and you see what happens, you'll understand what I mean. But yes, if we can take it away, please. That's not my number, by the way.
We are with Ade Adepitan, very well known to BBC One viewers, I'm sure. He plays basketball in the BBC One Trails, and of course, viewers of CBBC. And Ade, well, there are only 2 torchbearers to go after Ade. A member of the Great Britain Paralympic basketball team who finished in 4th place in Sydney. They'll be hoping for a medal-winning performance by the time they get to Athens. But Ade is such a popular member of that team and such an instantly recognisable face. He survived polio as a youngster and now has gone on to do tremendous things, both in the media and in sport.
59 all, 21 seconds left. One more offence will take Britain through if they can only score from it. Pollock has it. He's got to work the ball. 14 seconds left. If he can get in to take an extra shot, that would be wonderful. Ade Adepitan can win this if he can get the layup in. Oh, he's fouled.
Got to be an intentional, which means that Ade Adepitan will go to the line for 2, and then we'll get the ball back. That could be the play that wins us the game.
7.1 seconds left. 59 all, and Adepitan has got the throw on the line.
Yeah, this is a time that Ade Adepitan will have been dreaming about all his life. Putting himself on the line and making shots that could win the game and put GB into the semi-finals. He's a good free throw shooter, Ade. He's got good technique. Now it's all about bottle.
Yes, it is, and it's possession to Great Britain, and they will not need to take another if he gets one of these 2 in. Yes! Boom! He's got it, now then. He's got another, and then we've got possession, and we just hold on to the ball. We do not attempt to shoot.
They must keep moving the ball, though, when we put the ball in from the sideline. We must keep moving the ball, because the USA will be looking to foul us.
He's got the second, and that means we're 61-59 with 7 seconds to go. Adepitan's done the job so far. Now then, we've got possession, and we don't need to score.
How good must Ade Adepitan feel then after hitting those 2 crucial shots?
Piece of play, particularly by Ade Adepitan, to hit those 3 shots at the end, and the team coming across to say well done, and they have beaten the world champions.
For the BBC documentary across Nicaragua, and they sent 11 of us all with different disabilities. We had to cross from one side to the other. We had to get our own water and get our own food, and it was an epic journey. I'm hoping the sound will come back, because this is the bit where I swear, and you all need to hear that. This is probably the biggest challenge I've had in my life, actually. I think I'm the sort of person that's always looking for challenges. You know, I always get a buzz of pushing myself to the edge and taking myself to the limit.
Ade Adepitan contracted polio when he was 2, leaving him with withered leg muscles that can't support his weight.
You know, if you grow up with a disability from such a young age, you don't really know any different.
He's one of Britain's best-known Paralympians, winning bronze in the men's basketball at the Athens Olympics.
This is going to be something that I'm going to love and hate at the same time. It's a beautiful struggle, and that's what it's all about, the beautiful struggle. And I'm going to go out there and struggle beautifully.
One of nature's most awe-inspiring sights, over 5,500 feet of active volcano. They've been anticipating this for weeks. After overcoming so many hardships, all 7 wanted to take on the volcano. In the last 100 years, it's erupted 24 times.
This is probably the worst surface for a wheelchair.
The volcanic ash is like thick sand for Ade. The team's pace setter just minutes ago, he's now holding the others back.
It was always going to be difficult, and probably a little bit like everything else here, it's a little bit more difficult than I expected anyway.
God! Yeah. Stop anyway. Push! Right, we've got it. Go, 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 go. Push! And again, and again, and again. Come on, just another foot, another foot. Okay.
I was hoping the terrain was going to change, actually, because everyone kept saying once you get through the bushes and you get over the top, it'll be a lot easier. I was trying to be optimistic. That's it. Good job, Carl. Now pull.
You ready? Push! You right, guys?
Forced out of his wheelchair, Ade has no choice but to crawl his way up.
It sort of brought back flashbacks, it brought back memories and stuff like that from when I used to try and walk without a wheelchair, and I used to crawl about a bit, and I had some tough times at school. People used to call me Black Monkey and stuff like that from the way I used to like crawl around. And it just kind of hit me hard. You get that fucking camera out of my face. I went to a mainstream school with all able-bodied kids, and I always wanted to be like an able-bodied person, just like walk normally. And I used to never look in the mirrors because in my mind, I was able-bodied.
Sulphurous fumes billow around them. This is the volcano's steepest, hottest point.
Fucking boiling. It's really hot. It's burning my hands. Burning my legs. It's like one of the few times that I've ever prayed, you know, God help me, man, help me through this. It was just so much agony. Come on, Ozzy. Open off the last time, Put it there, man. Carl, man. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, full stop. Without a doubt. Really.
Ade has crawled and pulled himself for over 5 hours, climbing almost 4,000 feet.
You know, you try not to think about the end before you get there because that's kind of really dangerous. But we've done something special. I expected it to be difficult, but I didn't expect it to be as emotionally challenging. It's taken me by surprise as well. But I will be really pleased to like get to the end of it, man. We'll probably get there and someone would have moved the beach. 1, 2, 3, let's go! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Each and every one of us will have our own metaphorical volcano to climb, and hopefully it won't be as tough as that one that I climbed. But, you know, my message to you is is to believe in yourselves, challenge yourselves, you know, and don't not do something because you're afraid of failing. Embrace who you are, you know, take that on board and go for your passions, go for your dreams. And most importantly, never ever give up. If I was able to do it coming from Lagos, Nigeria, I'm sure you guys can. So please go out there and embrace your dreams. Thank you.